Alright guys, here's a very familiar angle from my 928 up on jack stands with the hood open. This time around, something interesting happened to me about 3 or 4 weeks ago. My wife and I were actually in the 928 returning home from Porsche's 75th anniversary in North Houston. I decided to take the 928 as part of that celebration. Car drove fantastic all the way up there. It was a 100-degree day, and coming home it drove great as well. No issues whatsoever. But then I pull into my driveway and then I noticed that oil was spewing out of the expansion tank for the radiator. Immediately I panicked, as anybody would, thinking that it was a head gasket issue, and brought the car into the garage and kind of calmed down for a little bit and decided to do some research, and come to find out that the factory radiator actually has the oil cooler built in on the driver's side, and what occasionally will happen is that oil cooler in the radiator will fail, and it's happened to other owners after doing some research on Renlist. And what happens is 5 bar of oil pressure will overcome the 1 bar of water pressure, and the oil pump will end up pushing oil into the cooling system. So if you can see right here, that is a lot of oil suspended in my coolant. Now this car was running Geo5 coolant from the previous owner. The time was pretty opportune because I was gonna get ready to flush it anyway and replace it with the new pink Porsche coolant that they now use in all their water-cooled 911s and all their water-cooled cars. So the timing was coincidentally not bad, and I did have a bit of a mess. Granted, there was a lot of oil, of course, here in the old expansion tank, but anyway, it happens, and here we are about 3-4 weeks later, and I'm ready to reassemble everything. So what I'm gonna do, actually, I spoke to a good friend of mine in West Texas, and this happens in a certain generation Ford F-250 pickup. And in talking with my friend from West Texas, he's got a fleet of those Ford trucks, and the same thing happens where the oil cooler is integrated into the radiator, and the same thing will happen. It'll fail, and then oil starts being pumped into the water passages of the engine. What they'll typically do is mechanics will, for those Ford trucks, they'll loop the oil lines. So that's what I've done here. I have this old rubber hose. It's actually off my BMW M6. I have this rubber hose that I'm looping the oil lines, as you can see, and I'm going to go back with the old radiator. I'm going to flush it and clean it, and then I'm going to actually use distilled water with some ZEP degreaser and use that to clean all the water passages in the engine. And the reason I'm doing that is I'd rather get all that gunk and stuff out with the old components rather than the new ones. So what are the new ones? I actually bought a brand new aluminum CSF radiator, and I definitely don't want any oil residue in this guy. So I want to make sure that all the oil has been flushed out of the engine, including the old Geo5 coolant. And then I also bought new hoses and a new expansion tank. The expansion tank from Porsche, these can be very expensive. This is actually they're identical. They're from a R107 SL Mercedes. Any of that generation SL, it'll work. The only thing is these do not have the coolant sensor, which is no big deal. So everything else is 100% bolt up though. So that's so that'll go into the car here pretty quickly. There's the new hoses, and you can get all this stuff from various vendors, so just do your research, and you can save some money if you shop it around. And what I'm going to do as well is when I flush the system, I'm not going to install the thermostat. I actually polished the housing here. This came out pretty good. I took the thermostat out, so when I flush it, there'll be no physical obstruction. So it'll be all open passages in that cooling circuit. And that way it'll help flush everything out a little bit more efficiently than if the thermostat was in place. I'm going to reuse the old hoses as well, so that way my new hoses don't get contaminated. And then once I'm satisfied that everything's flushed and clean, then everything will go back in. The other thing that I did do, I spent a bit of money, is I bought a brand new shroud from Porsche. This is like $500. And the reason I bought this new is my old shroud, the tabs at the bottom here are all broken. And you can see there's 3 that need to be there. And then on top of that, on the old shroud, it's cracked and damaged at the top. So this shroud has lasted well, but I'm really impressed actually that you can still get a brand new one from Porsche. It's a bit expensive, but it's a big part, and you know, it's what you got to do. And so I didn't mind spending a little bit extra for that. The other thing too, on my electric fans, these are no longer available from Porsche. So if your fans are not working, your only choice is to try and find a set that's used. Mine work fine, but what I did do with my fans is I sanded them down and I refinished them, so they came out pretty good. They look good, and they're ready to go into the shroud. So I'm going to install them here pretty shortly. And then that's really it. It should go pretty well. It'll take a while to flush all that stuff out of the cooling passages, but at least I'm ready to do it, and here we are. So if I'll have a follow-up video on how it all went, and if there's any tips and tricks to share, I'll definitely throw up a follow-up video on it, but I think it'll go pretty good. So if you do see some oil in your coolant, don't freak out and think it's a head gasket or any type of premature failure. Definitely think about the fact that it could be your radiator on its last legs or failed. So I hope that helps. Talk to you on the next one. Take care, and hope everybody's staying cool in this crazy heat this summer. Bye. Okay, so here is the wrap-up video on installing the CSF aluminum radiator in my 928 after my original radiator failed and I had oil mixing with the coolant. I just wanted to show you guys how many gallons of distilled water took to flush the cooling circuit in the engine. So as you can see, I started on August 9th, and then it took actually the better part of 3 days to flush all the oil out of the cooling circuit in the engine, and it took 16 times 1.5, so basically 20 gallons of distilled water to flush all the oil and oil residue out of the cooling passages in the engine. So definitely quite time intensive, and lots of trips to the local grocery supermarket to get distilled water. And what you can see here, which I think is noteworthy, is you can see the very first few flushes. You can see the oil ring on top of the distilled water, which was basically an emulsion of the oil and water together. And as I kept flushing the engine, you can see that ring gets thinner and thinner and thinner, and then of course it gets a lot more clearer in terms of how opaque each flush is. So as I got to like 8, 9, and 10, it's starting to improve, and then by 11, you can see an increased clarity in the distilled water. By 16, it's all clear, which is what you want to achieve. So by the time I hit number 16, which is basically 20 gallons of distilled water, I felt comfortable that everything was clean and flushed, and I was ready to install all the new components. So definitely very time intensive and involved, but take your time and it'll work its way out, and I'll get that cooling system clean again. I'll take you over to the car. I just took it for a 4 or 5 mile drive, and everything is working really well. I buttoned it up last night, but I'll just show you everything installed. You can see the new expansion tank right there, and I'm running the pink G40 coolant, which is the new Porsche approved coolant based on these aluminum engines, and that's what's actually in all the new 911s and on all the new Porsches, is that pink stuff. So I definitely recommend it over the G05 or the G48. And that's the Mercedes R107 expansion tank. It was a bit of a bear to fit with the bottom rubber hose that connects to the bottom of the tank into the hard line, but a lot of wiggling and then massaging, I was able to get it in. So that's the expansion tank. And then you can see here's the new CSF aluminum radiator, and the fan shrouds, the brand new fan shrouds. And then of course, as I mentioned earlier, I took the fans apart, cleaned them and painted them, and I put in a brand new coolant temp sensor in the radiator at the bottom. So and then of course all new hoses, and then I refinished all the clamps, polished the thermostat neck, and then I've installed a new Waller thermostat. So no leaks, everything looks good, and the car runs well, and glad to get this one finally finished after picking at it for quite a few weeks now. So hope this video helps anybody that has an issue with your radiator where oil is mixing with your cooling or coolant, and don't panic. It's more than likely it's just the failure of the original radiator. Again, my car has 140,000 miles. This is an 88, so the original radiator has done its job, and nothing wrong with a nice new aluminum replacement from CSF, and actually it fit beautifully, and the new shroud fits really well on it as well. So all the fit and finish there were no issues at all, and everything is very, very well made. So hope this video helps, and hope everybody's enjoying the 928s and keeping cool on this crazy hot summer. Take care. Bye.